Good morning. It's January the 8th, 2026. So awesome to be here. I'm doing my sermon review today as as I've been trying to do with my previous sermon series. I want to do this with this one also. We've started that new series, the AM series, and I can finally tell you what that series full name is AM LawVE. But in the O of love is AW, which makes it law. See, the reality is you can't separate God's love with God's law. And I started out the sermon with some things I've been reading actually in some other books and have known. It just finally started to make sense, and I've heard it before, put in other ways, but maybe now that I've wrapped my silly brain around it, I can maybe help somebody else understand it too. Because a lot of times we don't think about our obligation to God. I mean, we just kind of shrug it off and act like it's all about God's redemption, our relationship with Jesus, and this and that and the other. And we don't understand the bigger picture of it all. Okay? So let's talk about the bigger picture for just a second. There's two main questions about our living life. Really there is. There's what ought I do? I think that's really the first and foremost question about life. What ought I do? How should I live it? Why should I live it? We have all these different pieces and parts, but the biggest one is what ought I do? And that leads to the second question, which would be, why ought I do it? So the first question is basically morals, or, how to go about life itself. The second question is moral obligation / duty. And when we look at who we are, we have to stop and remember the beginning. In the beginning, God. I mean, that's in the beginning, God. It wasn't in the beginning Joel. It wasn't in the beginning, Fred or George or whoever, we think we are. It's in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And we know, as we read the story, what that leads to, that He created us, and we are His creation. And because of that, there is a moral obligation, a responsibility to said Creator. We are obviously less than the one that created us. And He didn't create us for random purposes, created us and then just wound up the clock and left. No, He created us with purpose, because He created us in His image. And that has a purpose, that has a place, that has a plan. You can't separate out those two things. And that morally obligates us to listen to Him. But since we're created in His image, it also brings about a whole bunch of other little details like, choice and love and all these other little quirks that is part of that image. And we definitely have a moral obligation to reflect that image, yet part of that reflection is having a choice to do it or so not, And I'll be honest with you, I don't really care if you're from the Calvinistic mindset of He gives us faith or not. If He's given us the faith, that desire to reflect His image would be there. And I still think that there's a choice after that point of whether we're going to seek what we believe or not. And you can take your theology and do whatever you want, but I'm just going to kind of stick with what I see in Scripture. And the reality is we are obligated to obey. Now, but when you actually go to the book of Exodus and you go to chapter 20 and you start off with the first two verses, it it starts off actually in this place. And I can't remember the exact words. I don't have it up in front of me, but something to the fact that he spoke all these things to them, the people of Israel. And it starts off with, I am the Lord your God. In the beginning, God. But it starts off with moral obligation. I am the Lord your God. Now, not all of these people who are now standing in front of Mount Sinai in fear and trembling chose, necessarily for him to be their God. He's just stating a fact. I am the Lord your God. Period. We can reject that truth, and we'll talk about this more in the next couple sermons, but there's the facts. God is creator. We are the created, that we're created in his image. But look what the next line says. Who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. See, those first two questions lead to a third one. Though we have a list, the Ten Commandments, of what we ought to do, and we have a moral obligation to him because he's our creator and he's the one who gave us the list, what's the motivation? I mean, what motivates me to do it? Because, we know how, and we've seen people have come out of households of because I said so. Families, where it's always been under my thumb, and if you're going to live in my house, you need, blah, 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 blah. But that isn't motivation. It may be still true. Don't get me wrong. They're not wrong. It's not wrong for a father or a mother to say, hey, I brought you into this world, I can take you out. Because there is a moral obligation as a child to obey their parents. Okay? Especially if you're going to stay in their household. But the thing is, that doesn't motivate us. Just because my mom or dad said, because I said so, the next day I'm going to be struggling with motivation to take the trash out again, just because. Because I said so, and as a motivator, it's still true, but it's not a motivator. And that's where we come to the other part. The reality is, I'm going to go back, I'm going to stay with the parent idea, is because I said so is wrapped because I'm cooking for you, and I'm providing for you, and I'm wanting to teach you responsibility, and I've been showing you this grace and love and giving of myself all these years. And there is a moral obligation, and I do make the rules of this house, but I've also shown you care and love and kindness and provision and all these different things. At least that's what's supposed to happen. Does that make sense? See, in the other part of that verse, he's showing I moved first. I made plans for Abraham. And I called him out of the land of Chaldea to the land that they're now going to go possess. And he obeyed. I moved first, he listened. And because of that, he was righteous. Because I said, and he moved, righteous. Not perfect. Well, we want to get into that. And that's the same thing he's calling these people to do. Listen, I moved and rescued you. I heard your cries. And because of my promise to Abraham, I rescued you and brought you into this land. Okay? And I love you. I provided. I moved. That's your motivation. The truth is, I have the authority, but I also acted. I have the authority, but I also acted. And showed you that I'm trustworthy. Showed you that I love you. And what we're going to see is in God's law is God's love. You can't define love. specifically the love of God, without understanding his law. I mean, Jesus said that the greatest commandment is to love the Lord thy God with all the heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. But we tend to focus on the second one and not the first one. Well, if we do that, first, it's out of order. Second, we actually don't know what love is. He moved. He moved. And he's going to show us what love looks like. And there's so much more to it. And I hope that you join me for this series of the I Am LawVE series to allow God to show us what love looks like and some of the flaws we have in our thinking. Because we start in the wrong place, we are motivated in the wrong way or for the wrong purpose. And we need to correct those things. If we're going to have a healthy, strong relationship with God and our neighbor, we need to love the Lord thy God and understand what his love for us looks like so that we can reflect it because we are his image bearers. I want you to reflect on that. Take the time to really think about how we've mistakenly thought about God's law as a bunch of do's and don'ts, mostly don'ts, and to ruin our fun and to take away this and blah, 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 and like an oppression rather than a freedom. Have you done that? I know I have. May God bless you. Have a great week, and the Lord be with you as you reflect on God's law, because he is love.